So welcome to the very first trial of this. It's a new initiative to provide a forum for us to talk a little bit about Brunel's research and its impact on you in Uxbridge and your community. And lots of opportunity, we hope, this evening for some discussion around the topics raised. This is the first one. And the topic, of course, is Uxbridge Reimagined. And then over the next 3 weeks, we're doing 3 different topics. So we've got reducing food waste next Monday, isolation and loneliness the Monday after that, and then domestic abuse and the courts as the final of the 4 in this series. And so you're very welcome to register or just pop along to any of those that might interest you over the next couple of weeks. So tonight's session, I'm pleased to say, is led by Dr. Monica Degen, who is a reader in urban cultural sociology in the political and social sciences department of Brunel. She was educated in Barcelona, Munich, Lancaster and Birmingham, has conducted a range of field research on the politics of urban development and its effect on places and communities. In Barcelona on the La Ramblas, which is very similar to the Uxbridge environment, Manchester, Milton Keynes, Bedford, Qatar, and in London at Smithfield as well particularly. And she's accompanied by Tom Butler, who is an Arts and Humanities Research Council technical doctoral researcher at Brunel University. He's conducting a collaborative study with the Museum of London about their forthcoming move to Smithfield Market and the impact of culture-led developments on neighbourhoods. And he's also an associate lecturer at St Martin's in urban cultural sociology. So I'll leave Monica and Tom to kick the evening off. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm really pleased to see so many people here, and I think we're going to discuss quite an important topic. And I thought I'll give you just a very brief introduction to myself, to situate myself, and why this topic, why Uxbridge High Street, and why we did this study. So I lived in Uxbridge from 2002 till 2011, and I have very fond memories of living just up here on Wilmar Close, so I do know it pretty well around here, and more than anything because I found it always a very friendly place that has a really strong sense of community. However, I also always felt that more investment could happen here, and we're looking for that, and hopefully, it will now happen with the levelling up agenda, etc. That really pays much more attention to geography and the importance of place in social inequalities, but also in the making of society. So I was then interested in doing this research that's GLA funded actually to find out more on how to improve Uxbridge High Street. So the brief we had was basically how can we think about the High Street for the future? And especially thinking about, the impact that COVID has had, the impact that online retail has on the high street, and in general, 21st century social changes that have happened, and that especially in the UK, it's different on the continent, have really drawn people away from the high street. And in particular, I guess Tom and I are really interested in experiences. And if you think about it, and most people, we live our daily lives and, work and shop, etc., but don't really think about the importance that our embodied experience has in our feelings around spaces. And if I can put up in my lecturer hat on, what I always say to my students is that a geographical spot, an area, a town, is not a geographical spot on the map, but what it actually is, it's a place for people who live there, for people who work there, and this space that is quite abstract when you hear places like Paris, Barcelona, or Uxbridge, and you don't live here, what seems quite abstract becomes a place as you use it every day, and as you become familiar with it, as you do activities in that place, it really, creates a so-called place attachment. And that's why in my work I'm really interested in experiences, sensations, in feelings around place. Because I think a lot of work, when you read it in the newspapers or in policy, looks at statistics. But statistics don't tell you much about why people feel happy, depressed, feel they have opportunities, or maybe not, depending on where they live. And these experiences really frame, your sense of belonging, but also your well-being and your emotional well-being. And it's something that I guess both Tom and I are very interested. And so one could really argue that community or society shapes and is shaped through places. And how a city is structured and designed influences how people live, whether they come together or whether they are divided, whether they feel at home somewhere or whether they feel very disconnected. And all those thoughts were in my head when I came, and had this opportunity through some funding from the GLA to look at a high street that I know quite well from having lived here. And high streets are quite interesting places in town. They are the central node of any city, of any, town anywhere. They're hubs for transport and infrastructure. They're key to the identity of towns and cities as well. And the role of high streets is, however, very unique to its locality. So we can't compare Windsor High Street to Uxbridge, to, I don't know, making our places up, my hometown in Spain, Sant Cugat, etc., etc. Yeah, each town will have its unique high street that is created not just through historical connections and facts and buildings, but also through the social infrastructure of the place, through who uses it, and what meaning it has in the particular locality. And what we really wanted to understand here in Uxbridge is what makes Uxbridge High Street unique. What is its unique identity? And how can we look at it by focusing on the experiences that locals actually have? And like I mentioned at the beginning, COVID really brought to light the importance of public spaces. And I don't know about you, but after a month locked at home, I was just itching to be on Oxford Street or somewhere surrounded by people, places that I don't usually like that much, like a crowded Oxford Street. I was desperate for. I was thinking, I really miss having strangers and life around me. And what we noticed in our interviews and our focus groups on Uxbridge High Street is that, yes, the High Street really mattered to people. And we'll talk a bit more in a minute, why it is so important. But what we found out that, what came really out of our research is that public spaces, and especially the high street, is a convivial space, meaning it's a place where people congregate, where they meet, not with friends only, but also with strangers. And it's that meeting with strangers, this kind of, almost like flaneuring, around, where you take in views, smells, etc., really helps people to feel at home and feel, a sense of belonging to a community, to a society. And that's actually some of the, responses we had initially of why the high street matters, where, and I'm quoting here, a black British female in her 60s, she said, what I missed most during lockdown was the opportunity to socialize on the high street, the chance encounters where you bump into people you haven't seen for a long time and then arrange to meet. I bumped into an old work colleague, and the flow of memories that came back when we started chatting was startling. Another short quote that I really want to also read out by a 20-year-old Middle Eastern male on Uxbridge High Street was, Uxbridge High Street is a great environment. It is a place to just be free. And that really stuck a chord with me, a place to just be free. There's a lot of outdoorsy things going on, and I don't really have to sit in any of the shops to be able to just sit, enjoy, and be free. So this notion again of the freedom, the social aspect of the high street, that these quotes express, was really one of the key findings from our research. And in total, we spent most of the summer, 3 months, researching the high street. We analyzed the experiences of 360 users of the high street. We did interviews, focus group, we did poetry workshops with people to really get at these emotional feelings and attachments. What else did we do? Photographs. So we did an array of different methods to get at this, more sensorial feeling attachment of place, to find out what did people care about on Uxbridge High Street. And let me now pass on to Tom to start talking about the concrete findings. The first one was that we very much thought of, or found out that Uxbridge High Street is divided into 4 areas. And if you look on page 8, starting at page 8 in the report, you can see I think you all know those 4 distinct areas. We focused here to these areas came out of the interviews, of the survey, out of the vox pops we did. We focused here on the visual, sensory, and spatial characteristics of each area. And we asked people, how do they feel? How do people experience or describe these different areas?
Thanks, Monica. So I should just situate myself first as well. So I'm actually a bit of an interloper. So I grew up in Merton and hadn't been to Uxbridge High Street before beginning this research. As anyone from London knows, often the sort of compass points are quite sort of alien. But I think I've got to know it really well during the period in a way that fresh pair of eyes meant I had a slightly different perspective, and certainly that convivial nature that Monica talked about was sort of very apparent as I got to know the high street. We, as Monica said, our research and sort of looking through the research participants' eyes, we determined these 4 separate spaces of the high street, which were, one was the central high street. So this is page 9, which is the sort of semi-pedestrianised area. Centred on the station forecourt and the Chimes shopping centre. And this area is really appreciated for its diversity of both commercial and social functions, and it's a pleasant environment to sit in or eat outside. And benches are positioned in such a way as to encourage conversation or just people watching, so not talking to people but sort of being with people. The flower displays, mature trees and benches also mark this area out from the others. But we did notice 3 sort of conflicts, or what we're calling sort of spatial sensory tensions. And firstly, in some ways it's really interconnected with the Chimes shopping centre and the pavilion's main entrance, but it is experienced as a wholly separate social and sensory environment. And the sort of outside space to eat and drink is quite desirable, but it's often dominated by delivery bikes or overflowing rubbish. And the fact that the bus stops and the tube station make it really accessible, but many people are often only passing through rather than stopping to access these transport links.
So it's not a place to dwell, it's a place that people cross and forget, more or less. Although if you look at the images and compare them with some of the other areas, it is quite a beautiful and aesthetic place to be in. But because it's on the roundabout that's going around Windsor Street, and just the exit of the tube, people don't stay there or spend much time there.
And then the second area was the pavilions to Tesco sort of stretch, which is centred around Tesco, the bus stops and the pedestrianised area. And this is characterised by basically constant traffic and bus flows, which creates intense rhythms of activity and calmness. And groups occasionally rest on the benches with larger numbers congregating when the buses arrive, before the buses arrive. And during the week, you'll know that the McDonald's attracts larger groups of, for example, construction workers in the morning and then teenagers at lunch in the late afternoon, but these groups quickly disperse. The medium-rise buildings, hard landscaping and lack of trees and greenery mark this area apart from the rest of the high street. and the older traditional buildings towards the junction with Harefield Road feel disconnected. The pavilions act as a visual and physical barrier to Fassnage Park, even though there is sort of foot access. And several alleyways here. For example, the one we came down towards Fassnage Hall if you came from the High Street, and towards I think it's Yishin, the Chinese restaurant, feel unsafe, particularly after dark. So the tensions here were the wide pavements and public spaces sort of on the Tesco car park side, compared to the narrow, constrained pavements on the side actually where quite a lot of the food places are, so the McDonald's, the Subway, etc. The fact that the pavement design is different to the rest of the High Street and is experienced as sort of grubby and grey, which gives the impression that it's not cared for. And then the sort of bland exterior of the modern buildings and scale of the pavilions creates a sense of a generic High Street, despite what are sort of older heritage buildings on the other side of the street, and, as I said, the proximity to the park. The third area was the Civic Centre and the Chimes Piazza. So this area does have large public spaces, the Civic Centre forecourt, the seating area of the piazza, and there's a small green space towards the southeast. But despite their potential as public spaces, they remain fairly empty across the week.
So although there's opportunity to dwell, as we know, in whether the cinema Odeon is, etc., all those squares, people aren't really using them at lunchtime, very few people. The same around the Civic Centre, there was a lack of use. There's so much potential, but it's not really exploited. They're empty spaces largely,
So the tensions here were there is some planting and trees, but the High Street's dominated by that sort of hard surface of the Civic Centre forecourt. And it does have some of the sort of most notable architectural structures, so Randall's, the Civic Centre, the Regal Cinema building, but it also has some of its most run down. And although the Piazza and Civic Centre are directly connected to the High Street, they're sort of almost invisible from it before you approach it. And then the last area is Windsor Street, which is characterised by lower-rise heritage buildings and smaller retail units. And it has this sense of physical dislocation from the High Street that is reinforced by vehicle traffic and a road layout. So the sort of tensions here are the fact that it is a desirable heritage streetscape, yet it's experienced as being disconnected from the High Street. And it's home to the landmarks of St Margaret's Church and the Market House, but these essentially have become a bit of a traffic island. And the fact that it's actually a sort of cherished place, people have quite nostalgic memories towards it by young and old, yet again it's still used mostly as a cut-through.
And I would say that Windsor Street and the in front of the tube station, the area, what did we call it? The A number. The initial.
The first one, the Central High Street area.
Central High Street area are the most cherished ones, whereas the area on top of here, Tesco onwards, and
the Civic Centre.
Towards the Civic Centre, the two ends are regarded by the public as not being cared for much and not liked much either. And so these were some of the initial findings. We then started to look into more detail. Why is this happening? Why do we have these very four different areas, which is good, places should be different, but why do they feel so disconnected? And we started then looking at the activities and uses of the High Street. And who actually uses, the High Street at what times? Because there are also temporal differences between day and night, weekday and weekend. And it was quite interesting to look at that, because the ways that people feel in cities depends very much on what goes on, the activities that are happening, and who uses the High Street at what time. And with the initial data, out of our 350 Voxbox students, most people were between 20 and 30, if you look at page 13. There's a diversity of people, of course, different age ranges using the High Street, but we would say that the big number of people is between the age of 15 and 50 or 40, was the highest group using over the high street. And interestingly, most people use the high street every day. So around 90% of our respondents use the high street every day, 60% 2-3 times a week, and then 30% once a week. Is that right? Yeah. So, and in terms of ethnicity, if you look at page 14, it's quite diverse. Like there is white British slight majority, but only slight, because there's a lot of different ethnicities. So no group really overrules another group. So it's one also of the strengths of Uxbridge that it's highly, highly diverse, with no ethnic group really dominating over another.
And then should we look at the flows and activities? So we looked at how many people are coming in and out of the Uxbridge station every day, and it showed that there were more than 14,000 entries and exits on the busiest weekdays. And this is a pattern largely mirrored every week, with Wednesday, Thursday and Friday the busiest days of the week. But bear in mind that as we were doing this, there were still some coronavirus restrictions in place, and passenger flows are known to be highly seasonal. If we look at pages 16 and 17, here we sort of go into a lot of detail about each of those 4 areas that we set out, and the difference of temporal flows across those 4 areas, both during the week and then the weekend. So it sort of represents 24 hours on Uxbridge High Street in these 4 different areas.
What it really shows, both weekdays and weekends, that the high street is very active between 6 in the morning and 12 o'clock at night. And we think that this could be, again, used much more to do public events on the high street, and to entice people to not just be in the restaurants, in the pubs, or go to the cinema, but have, activities, community activities, maybe in some of the empty shops, the library maybe being open longer, etc. Because there is a sense that, there is a constant use, almost, between it's quiet between 12 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning, 6 hour, gap of bit of peace. But the rest of the time, different groups use the high street, at different times, so that there's always something going on. And there was a strong feeling of safety because of that in general on the actual high street by most respondents, because there's always people around, there's always, activities happening. We then, after looking at the temporal flows, what we started looking at was much more at how people what different people actually associate with the high street. And we wanted to find out about the immediate feelings on the high street, to understand what people call the atmosphere of a place, for example, of Uxbridge High Street. So we asked very straightforward questions, what you like best, what you like least, and you can see the answers of that on,
from page 20 onwards. They've broken down all into these word clouds, so it sort of gives quite a quick representation of people's responses.
So if you look at what you like best on Uxbridge High Street, it was things like, and the bigger the words, the more respondents were around that topic. Variety of shops, all is in one place, the food option, but also people, and places to sit, and diversity of people. So it was very much, very positive associations came out of here, where people really feel that in Uxbridge everything, is in one place, and it has everything I need, was our often answer but by many of the respondents. And around 20 people or people between 15 and 20, so young people, commented that it's got good diversity of services, such as a post office, cinema, and cafes. And overall, a lot of people really enjoyed the high street, not just because of the retail, but because of the social life it offers. So, for example, one 40 to 50-year-old Asian British woman commented, "It feels local, but it still has a diverse experience." Other people said, "Lots of my friends are local. It's conveniently placed." And somebody else said, "I see a lot of the same people when I do my shopping. It's friendly." So it's this sense of, a village feel almost that Uxbridge High Street can offer, apart from, the diversity of retail, of course. But then we also asked a straightforward question of what you like least of Uxbridge High Street. And we had the usual answers that one often gets, like antisocial behavior, limited range of shops, crime, begging, lack of parking. But then what was also more interesting for us was that there was not much to do but to shop. And that came a lot from younger people, that they wanted to have more activities for younger people, for teenagers, etc. Boring other than shopping. And somebody said also there's not much to do without money. And again, it was something that came up, especially at the range of, teenagers up to 30-year-olds, that they wanted more free activities. But also, the senses played a strong role in the people's reflections of the negative aspects. So things like feeling unsafe was very much linked to litter, dirt, rather than actual crime happenings or anything that people had perceived, at least on a personal basis. It was more the overall aesthetic of the place.
But yeah, bad smells came up quite a lot in this section.
Lots of bad smells. And then we started, after those straightforward questions that might have given what one would expect, we asked people more interesting questions, we thought. So we asked questions like, how would you define the high street by a color? And everybody was looking at us. And Nancy, you said, that everybody was saying, why do they want to know what color the high street has? Basically, there's a lot of psychological studies done, etc., that explains that the color really reflects a bit, your emotional feeling about a place, how you feel, whether it's, lots of different colors or more uniform. So, surprise, surprise, what happened with Uxbridge High Street on page 25. The main color that came up was grey. Yeah, I don't know if everybody agrees or not. So it was mainly the grey, green, brown, but all the brown, but also green, which was interesting, which was often linked to the flowers that you see outside the station. So I think while, one might laugh when you look at that, is this Uxbridge High Street? Probably not. It says something about people's relationship to it, how they feel about it in terms that it seems to be a bit of a functional, boring environment. Not to say that this can be changed quite easily, but, there are also, a lot of different colors, which also highlights, again, this paradox which we constantly saw on Uxbridge High Street. This, on the one hand, yes, boring, functional. On the other hand, it feels like a village. It's friendly. It feels safe. And we had a lot of this constant duality in the answers.
And within that, there was a minority that were, the enthusiastic people were really enthusiastic. So it wasn't just one colour, but it was rainbow or flowers or super colourful or mixed. So there are these people that are really have positive attachments with it.
And then we also asked people, how would you describe Uxbridge High Street as a sound? And again, you have on page 26 things like, and I'm quoting here verbatim, dinosaur roar. I heard of animals. Quiet. I would like music. It's boring. Not loud, but the sound is steady, happy. Not as loud as Elephant and Castle, but just the sound of people. And if you look at the word cloud, you have again this kind of mixture of extreme activity, people chatting, talking, music, kids, versus calmness, monotone, buses. Yeah. So again, this kind of constant change, and it has to do again with the temporality of the street. So depending what time of the day you are on the high street, one sound will predominate over the other, and so on. But what it really showed us is that people, have strong associations with the high street through things like sounds. One more example would be was that we also asked, how would you describe Uxbridge High Street as a smell?
Yeah. So
and there we have Momo's Nepali dumplings as a response.
Yeah,
coffee.
Popular response, the dumpling stand.
The dumpling stand. In some places the trash is really bad, like in front of Tesco. I can't smell the trees or any food here. There is no pleasant smell. So there was coffee smell and the usual, food let out smells, there were also a lot of negative smells associated with rubbish, with the lack of cleanliness, etc., etc. We'll just talk about one more thing. So we went through all these different sensations with everybody, and you can read it up yourself. But the main finding was that basically there was, on the one hand, a strong feeling of attachment, but also this strong feeling that things need to improve, and that things, that the high street could offer something, better than what it is at the moment. So,
I wonder if we just mention
the emotional
map. So we also then really sort of tried to tap into people's emotional connection to the high street, and we actually ran an event in here on the 1st and 2nd of October. I think I recognise a few faces from that. So rather than reflecting on the visual form, so rather than being out and about, it was how the different spaces made them feel and why. So this is page 36 if you've got it. And I think what's really interesting about this is the interplay of memory and pride. And for example, that these are related to other people, whether that might be being a bit scared or a sense of home and belonging. And also then some of the spatial groupings are quite interesting. And we can see that the area behind the pavilion, so not far from where we are now, is quite sort of emotionally fraught, while immediately in front of the station has more positive emotions.
I guess we'll leave it at this. We will conclude now, and then you can ask us questions, I hope. And I'm more nervous here than ever today, and he will now hate me for saying that. I brought even my son along, as it was a community event, and he always asks me, what do you do for work, Mommy? Just talk. And I'm like, no. So Daniel is in the background, my strongest critic. So just to sum up a bit, what we think and what we found out is that overall we would say that Uxbridge High Street is really valued already by many for being a friendly, multicultural and accessible public and social space. However, the High Street is also experienced very much as banal, functional, rundown and grubby. Its social diversity, convenience and compactness are regarded as its unique identity. And it is a very important civic and social infrastructure for many residents. And we've got a lot of beautiful quotes that really illustrate that. The reimagining of the future Uxbridge High Street should nurture these cherished practices and uses, such as the fruit cellar, the buskers, the popular charity shops, build the baker, but also expand its remit and maybe organize more moments and spaces of encounter that might include much more free events, interactive design features, pop-up retail, community spaces, like the empty shops that are the leftover from the pandemic, should be used for free, we think. Further, it should aim to improve the wayfinding and design of the high street to make it easier for visitors to navigate and appreciate this amazing architectural heritage that Uxbridge has. I mean, I love Art Deco, and Uxbridge is full of amazing Art Deco architecture, the station, etc. And we feel that all of that should be highlighted much more. And currently, people experience the high street in distinct zones, reflecting the sensory experiences and temporal flow. So its future design, we think, should emphasize visual connections to encourage the awareness and use of all 4 areas. And rather than attempting to homogenize the experience, each area needs to be cherished for what it is. And, however, different uses might be able to overlap. So we also think that overall that the challenge is not about drawing new people in. We're not talking about gentrifying the high street at all, but getting those that are already here. And there's so many, of them. What was the daily? 14,000 people. Yeah, on average. There might be more and some at weekends, etc. It is getting to those that are already here or it is in getting those that are already here and passing through to see and experience the high street differently and catering for the existing needs that are actually, at times not catered for. So we have some suggestions on how to improve things, and I think, have we got time quickly to just talk about them?
Yeah, I think
so.
so. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll
okay.
get questions as soon as you've done
that.
Yeah,
just 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So yeah, some of the conclusions were that sort of any next steps should have a basis in collaborative sensory design. Almost to take advantage of the people that know Uxbridge High Street best, their sort of insider knowledge, and to rethink the high street through the lens of these sort of sensory emotional experiences to create a more dynamic and vibrant town centre.
And there's already a lot of good practice. So today I met somebody from Japan who told me that Yokohama has used a sketch with local people, sketches, to understand how they should improve Yokohama in Japan. So, because often it's difficult to talk to planners or academics like us, etc., or about feelings in words. So why not draw what you want to see, what you want to experience? And we think that these kind of methods of drawing, of more community design approaches would really bring a lot of knowledge together of what needs changing and transforming on the high street.
We can also think about lighting, a lighting strategy that highlights the high street's diverse architecture, which is both sort of historic and 20th century, to animate the streetscape after dark, but also provide this sort of connection between the different areas that we discussed.
And then we thought that there need to be more moments and places of contact. So many more activities. Everybody was talking about the Christmas market and the French market, how amazing that is when it happens here. So why not have regular scheduled events monthly, not just at Christmas and key moments, but regular events and continuous programming. Then everybody talked about Uxbridge as High Street as a place to be. It is a social infrastructure. So we need chatting benches, for example. Denmark has done that. It's called a chatting bench. You sit there and then you chat to whoever sits next to you, etc. Or, movable seats. Or you could have, like I said, shops transformed into community spaces. The charities we worked with all need space, so why not have them on the high street so they're visible and people will also then go in and use them. Another thought I had was flexible and playful design. So I saw in Oslo they have play parks on the floor. So when they're children they can play, but if there are no children you just, you keep walking, but you have different colors, play areas on the floor basically. Encouraging casual performances. And then most of all I thought also, we need to emphasize the diverse histories of Uxbridge. There's so many different histories to tell, of the different groups that have, been here and developed Uxbridge. And the last one was strategies for events with Uxbridge College and Brunel, which I thought, there should be much more relationship. And why aren't art music students performing on the high street for free, etc.? And I'll leave it at that. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Tom, that was brilliant.
First of all, thank you so much. I love your presentation. I particularly love the questions that you asked your participants. I really like that. My question is, did you at all try to distinguish between people who actually live on the high street or close to it, to people who work here, to people who come from the outside?
We did note it down, but we didn't make a difference in terms of the answers. No, we didn't. We just noted when we were profiling people who was from where, etc. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, just to echo it. Sorry, I don't know your name. Isabel's point. It's really fascinating, and some of the way the questions have been asked. I think it adds a new depth and layer to kind of the answers that you're given, which is really interesting.
Thank you.
But I wondered how big the sample group was and how you chose the sample group in which you questioned and how diverse that sample group was. I know that there do seem to be a mix of ages, but an Asian man isn't a homogenous group.
No, yeah. No, of course, yeah.
But, so you can't just say like a man from this background has the same view. So was there a diverse mix? Sorry for doing.
Yeah. I mean, they were all all the respondents were, well, actually the vast majority were through Vox Pop, so it was stopping people in the high streets. There was no sort of preemptive strategy in that sense. But then when we reflected on the sort of the numbers and the data we collected, we found that the racial mix was reflective of Borough of Hillingdon as a whole, and actually it was almost a 50-50 gender split, but there wasn't. I suppose we were aware of not wanting to bias the group in that sense, and as researchers on the street recognising that, actually I've spoken to a lot of younger people today. I need to make sure I represent all the people that are on the high street.
We had around, I think it's somewhere in the report, 365 participants. 150 of them were Vox Pops, and the other people were either surveys or the different focus groups, poetry events we did over the summer here in Uxbridge. So no, it's not absolutely representative, but we looked, like Tom said, at the Borough Hillingdon statistics, etc., and it coincided quite strongly that the numbers we had. We were on a very tight budget, so we couldn't do thousands of people. We would like to do that, and it would be much more representative then, yeah. But then that's why in the quotes I also said, I mean, I know not every 50-year-old white woman is the same either, but we try to say, the age, gender, and...
Yeah, we were describing this as a pilot study when we started it, but it got a bit out of hand.
Yeah, it got a bit out of... We got so enthusiastic, we kept interviewing more and more people. Yeah.
The lady at the back first, yeah.
Hi.
I think that was really good. I'm really interested in reading the rest of this.
Oh, great.
And the stuff that you said kind of resonated with me as an Uxbridge, like high street residents, and like the 4 zones, and like the idea that it has potential, but some of it is like unused, and some of it is a bit boring, and kind of but I was quite kind of interested in whether the way that the different areas are used, the different zones are used, do you have an idea of whether they are similar or different to what the planners of the area or the developers or the businesses who are thinking about the waste infrastructures, like whether those map onto each other, the actual experiences of being there to what was planned?
To be honest, that's a big gap in the research. We didn't talk to planners. It's the next step, really, that we want to do. The university got a small amount of funding, and I said to Jeff, we need to. The planners will know more than us, or but we couldn't. We had to do it so quickly that we didn't have the opportunity to do that yet. But it needs to be done, and I don't know. I think there's a wealth of. I mean, what I am aiming to happen is that there's a wealth of knowledge with planners, of course, but also all of us here in the room, the residents and visitors, and the university. And I think these three stakeholder bodies need to work together, which hasn't happened yet, from what I can tell. Jeff, am I right? Yeah.
Sorry.
So.
You want to go ahead.
Hi, my name is Andy. I'm the newest vicar of St Margaret Church.
Oh, nice to meet you. Yeah.
So I found this very interesting. It's very, very informative. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
But I'm interested in where academia becomes practical. Is the London Borough Hillingdon going to act on any of your recommendations?
I'm looking at my boss here.
We are talking to them about it, and we would like to do some things, but obviously, that's obviously one of the issues.
Can I just say talking's not enough?
No, it's not. No, that's right. That's right. No, indeed, that's certainly true. You like to go next, and then take that. Yes, go ahead. You go ahead, and then we'll go next.
My name's Francis. I've lived in the area all my life and seen massive changes in the High Street. And I just feel it's sad that this sort of consultation didn't happen years ago when they pulled down many of the old buildings and many of the beautiful Art Deco buildings and architecture that we had. I mean, one bit remaining is the front of the station and Windsor Street, and the rest is virtually gone. I know we've got the cinema, but it is sad. I think in the future, any more planning hopefully won't be too much more development, because Uxbridge is pretty well developed already. That they will maybe consult the local residents as well as.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from the Reverend's question about the impact side of this, turning this sort of research into actually tangible results. Yeah. Have you seen, based on your academic networks where similar studies have been done, what sort of best practice is for leading organisations to work together to actually deliver that impact? And because I'm assuming this isn't a sort of, it might be a pilot for Brunel and Uxbridge, but it's been done well elsewhere, and there's things we can take on and learn. Because I'm keen to leave this room with a sense of whose door should I be knocking on as a resident who cares about the community here and the development of Uxbridge. Because ultimately stuff doesn't move until people are knocking on the right doors, and whether it's the GLA, whether it's our councillors that have just been elected, making sure they're doing the job we've elected them to do, or engaging with Brunel and Uxbridge College ourselves. It'd be great to get a sense of what best practices you've seen. Otherwise, you tend to find we can expend a lot of energy, but maybe in a inefficient way, and we can tire ourselves out trying to get a change and not know the best way to route that energy in an intelligent way. It'd be good to hear that from you guys.
Well, I think that GLA in this call, this specific call where they gave Brunel some seed funding, and the Chamber of Commerce, they gave them £20,000 of seed funding to start developing a pilot study, which my study was only £5,000, and we managed to get all of this out of it. So I think that it was the first step of Brunel working an academic institution with a local council, which in Europe happens a lot. I don't know, here in the UK I haven't seen it happening that much. It is slowly,
What do you describe about the European experience?
Well, I just know about Barcelona, where I'm from. Everybody talks about the Barcelona model, which can be highly criticized. It's become a very unequal city. It's not all that you see on TV, etc. Yeah, so there are a lot of problems there. But the universities have to spend, I think, 30% of their research on local projects with the council, and they work together, and they work with PhD students, etc. And I think it's a model that should be implemented, you know, in other countries as well. I know it happens in Sweden, actually, something similar. Why it's not happening here, I don't know. I often don't understand why, you know, why we don't copy each other, the good things. There's so much good practice across the world, not just Europe, that I think there needs to be much more. And Jeff has been trying, you know, desperately to find more funding.
Yeah, and this is a conversation that we're ongoing.
Yeah,
and this event is a little bit part of that process to try and find some further stakeholders that we can work with to take it forward.
But there is a lot of good practice out there. It just needs to be there needs to be a will. I've worked with the City of London, actually, who have taken on some of my suggestions, but they are the richest council in London. So they have the funding, and they then implement things. You know, like they have these benches out during COVID. They put the benches out for workers to eat. I mean, it wasn't directly Monica's idea, but you know, it was conversations, etc. And they're really thinking about their outdoor environment much more. Same, like Jeff said, the Barcelona Ramblas are being redesigned because they're overflown by tourists, and the locals have no space. I mean, that's the problem of a city like Barcelona. Locals feel pushed out. And there's a lot of anger, you know, anti-gentrification, graffiti, anti-tourism graffiti, which isn't good. But they need to find a balance between that. And again, they've used some of my suggestions, which is often quite simple. It's, you know, I always think every council should work with anthropologists, sociologists, whatever, you know, these kind of social scientists, to understand a locality and to work with people that are there, and not just people who come to the consultation events, which is the usual 5 people. We need to branch out. And like, I was really eager when I did my Vox Pops, you know, I really pushed myself to talk to teenagers, because we need to hear young people's voices. And there were amazing answers, and they weren't, you know, they weren't laughing at me. They were really, you know, engaged and engaging, and I really enjoyed actually talking to the youngsters, etc. So, yeah, sorry.
There's 2 examples you gave there, the City of London, and also Las Ramblas. It sounds like there's the underlying economic incentive to make things happen. So trying to attract and retain city workers in one case, and tourists in the other case. With Uxbridge, I'm not sure if you saw this in the study given the time that did it, but it tends to, I find it particularly because of access to Wembley, it tends to be a bit of a gateway to London. People coming at the M40 will stop here, especially on this Saturday is FA Cup final day. So you'll see the pubs from the morning heaving, and then, you know, the people coming down, you know, from the north for their London experience, going to Madame Tussauds, seeing the West End, that sort of stuff. They'll stay at their, I think it's the Premier Inn now, whatever it is. But so maybe if you're able to pick up on that, that's maybe something to weave into stuff to create this economic incentive to say, if you can improve the area and have that economic uplift by, you know, these people who are coming using Uxbridge as a hub for London and Wembley. I don't know. Maybe
I mean, we had the people managing the chimes, the pavilions involved in this work to some extent, and obviously, I think you're absolutely right that you could build more economic models around this to try and motivate some of this work and to feed into some of the thinking around what we wanted to do.
And not just economic, also health and well-being, because, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I would like to work with a psychologist, because I think, you know, going outside and mingling in the high street is good for our mental health. I need to prove it somehow, you know, part of the bigger project that I would like to do. So I think it, you know, long term, there's economic and health benefits in improving your environment. And
you actually see some good examples in the London Borough of Culture, you know, when different cultures are awarded funding. But again, it's sort of an exceptional case because they're given funding in order to improve, say, the public realm. But there are some good examples there, but it's always sort of short-term and sort of project-based rather than a sort of longer program.
But to prepare myself a bit for today, I looked up, you know, on the internet, the GLA information, and only 10% of London town centres have a strategy. in London of the boroughs, and that's really bad, I think. And that's why they're pushing these new initiatives around, in the London's recovery board mission now post-COVID, etc. And they're trying to really establish strategies for each council in different boroughs, etc. So let's hope. But it's all down to funding again.
Sorry, coming on.
I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you very much. It's really exciting what you've done. During lockdown, I set up a local residents association, which was quite a challenge. And I did reach out to Brunel, but I think it kind of, went a bit flat somewhere. I did it through one of my local councillors who sits on the Brunel committee, because I didn't know how to set up a residents association. I was thinking, I wonder if there's somebody there that knows how to help me. But we just live the other side of the dual carriageway to the town centre. So there's a deep demarcation between that, and that's where the park is. That people want to know about the park, but they don't make it across the dual carriageway. And having lived in Uxbridge for 47 years, I'm always depressed by the High Street. It's just, it's got a bit less windy over the years because it's got covered in. It used to be a wind tunnel. But the place that you talk about outside the station used to be somebody's lovely garden that went down to the River Pin, to the Fraser River. So it's a real sun trap. That's why people like that area. That's where it's the sunniest. There's not enough seats there. And there aren't enough seats there. So that is the best place, which is a desert. It's the sunniest place, right by your church.
I was just going to say also that they did try and set up a farmers market quite a while ago now, and it really didn't take off. And I think because it was up in the civic centre, and I don't think enough people use that end of the high street, so it kind of died a death. But I think if we could get more things, if we would sort of move it along the high street, so where the French market and the other market is always between the Poundland. If we were to move that up perhaps one step outside, sort of nearer the library, so gradually get people to move along. And if we had a market, some sort of market each week that was set in a different place, people might sort of gradually migrate up the high street and then use all the areas, but they've got to have something to go up there for, a reason to go. At a farmer's market or a craft market or something each week would be really nice. Bring in more, well, not that we want to bring people, give something interesting for people who want to come to go and see each week. It was a bit different.
I was going to say as well, it's interesting about litter. Everybody talks about litter, but that's because everybody drops litter. The council actually works really, really hard. And I was thinking, that's our money going into picking up the litter, but people don't feel responsible enough, and they just drop the litter. You can see them.
It's 2 minutes late, so I'll just take 2 more questions and then we'll have a cup of tea.
Thank you very much, Monica. You say that people experience the high street in distinct zones, and one of your research questions is about the experiential landscape of the high street. Would you not include the pavilions and the chimes as extensions of the high street? The way that the circulatory routes are planned?
No, definitely, but we were told to focus on the high street only for the GLA course, so we had to take out any private space, which they both are, the pavilion and
notwithstanding that they're engines of economic vitality and health and well-being.
The GLA wanted money spending because potentially they would need more GLA money to do something about the high street. But
it was so we had to delimit it. No, but I agree, and I both think they have different functions, the chimes and the pavilions. I love the pavilions because it has a proper European market, what I would consider a European market in it. Like I love going there, you can buy things you need and chat, and I like being Spanish, I like all that, So I think it has, places like that, that's what I meant, need to stay. I would hate to turn that into another shopping mall. It needs to be this kind of more local market, and the Chimes is more the upscale place, upscale market, and I think they play very different functions, but they are very much separated as well, design-wise, from the high street, and we thought that that's a mistake. They could be united more and be part of anything.
And kind of seen almost as individual destinations rather than speak to people that go, I'm just going to the Chimes or I'm going to pavilions in and out, rather than seeing
it as part of a whole,
It depends which way you come in, because you come in from sort of the Oxford A40, you tend to go in the Chimes, come into the Chimes car park. If you're coming from the other way, you tend to go in the one behind the pavilions. And very often you don't sort of migrate from one to the other.
Right, I'm just going to take one final point.
The only point, I was just going to make a quick point. I think that the litter is a huge problem in Uxbridge, and I do think the council needs to do a lot better in terms of implementing bins.
Having more bins.
Yeah, having more bins around the high street, because the ones with the road down here they get destroyed. They're not taken down. So I think that's like a big issue, and there's a huge rat problem, which again makes the area just feel so unclean because of the amount of litter there is. So I think I do think that more can certainly be done there. But just something I thought was overwhelmingly sad, actually, reading some of the comments that came out in the research, was around people feeling like things they dislike, being drunk people or homeless people or beggars, etc. And I think that we should look at, these are societal sort of issues, and actually there are other parts of the country have things such as community cafes where they employ people that might have addictions or people that are overcoming, they might come out of the prison system, and actually if we look at how we can rehabilitate people and integrate them into our society, it's going to have a knock-on effect to make it a happy, healthier society. If we make people feel included, rather than just shoving people off, or every time we see people that might have a drug or an alcohol problem, moving them along, and they're going to keep coming back, and the problems are going to keep existing unless we look at community resolutions to those, like those kind of cafes and things. And I think that we should centre our ideas around projects for people that often get forgotten about, including young people. I mean, the youth budget in the area was cut from 4 million to 400,000, and people complain about young people on the street. But can you really blame them when there's nobody young people to do? It's really shocking.
I mean, clearly the approach we've been advocating is an inclusive one, that takes on board all members of the community and tries to find solutions that are co-created. I did say that was going to be the last point. I wasn't realised it was going to be quite.
No, but you're completely right. I completely agree with you. Yes.
All right. I think this has been really interesting. The university is committed to trying to take this forward in one way or another, and we've been interested in engaging with you all to do that. We've got a questionnaire. Most important at the bottom, there is a contact thing so we can keep in touch with you, and that would be really helpful if you could complete this before you go, because we're obviously going to be moving, as we move forward, being able to talk to people who are interested in this and who are prepared to contribute would be super.
But also canvass your local MP, etc. for change. No, because I feel very strongly about it. Sorry. Am I allowed to?
Yeah, you are.
Am I allowed to say that? Yeah, well, we need to get money for this, and yes.
So, thank you, Monica. Thank you very much. So.